Hey,
Uh,
how's it going?
going well. This is Happy Hour Analytics for November. It's almost Thanksgiving, which is exciting over here. And joined today by Scott. And I'm Keith, as always, founder of SegMetrics. And yeah, looking forward to diving into this. We're
What
a
are you
little bit
drinking
all
today,
over the place.
Keith?
What am I drinking today? I am drinking Simpler Times Lager. I thought this was local, but it's actually from Wisconsin. So there we go. That's what I'm having. Wisconsin's like
I'm,
Oregon, so it's local in spirit.
as usual, I'm having a single malt. This is a Balvenie 21 because it's been that kind of day. So
If it wasn't noon, it would also be this type, but it is also noon Pacific. So
amateur. So we're talking today about building a data-driven culture. Yeah.
yeah, so this is something that you and I have been talking about for months now. I think is both internally and for people that we work with. How do you make everyone wants to have data driven decisions. Everyone wants to make decisions about the business based on data that they're seeing and to do things based on reality. But the problem is it's sometimes very hard to get everyone on the same page, to make everyone care about it, to have people think in a data driven way when a lot of people just aren't necessarily used to that. I'm also not used to working in a data driven way. It's taken many years to get there.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's what we're talking about today.
So what do you think the key features to building a culture? We're talking about a team culture, right? Surrounding
Mhm.
data. What do you think? Where do you start? I guess would be the first question. What do you do? What do you do first?
I mean, I still think the initial thing is trust, right? Like the core bit of getting people to be data driven is, people do things because they see something that works and they trust it and they see results from it, right?
Mhm.
And I think that having the core fundamental piece of getting everyone to be data driven is to make sure that you have a sole source of truth that anyone can go to and ask a question of. And if they're asking the right question or they know what they're doing or anything around that, they'll get an answer that is acceptable to everyone. Right. So this idea of
It's provable, right?
it's provable.
It's backed up. So like that's where a tool like ours comes in, right? So Segmetrics comes in. We've got a unified place for all of the data to be, so that you can go to one place to get the answer. You don't have to go to 5 or 6 places,
Right.
and then the other people on the team don't have to go to 5 or 6 other places. So you all are looking in the same place at the same time with the right data.
Right. Exactly. And I think one of the issues that we get into, and we see this at Segmetrics, we see this with any reporting tool, is that when you add power into the mix, so when you have flexible reporting, when you have things that allow you to ask more detailed questions in a multitude of ways, people who are not used to that or who are not all on the same page will ask similar questions that come up with very different answers because of the way that they asked those questions and the way that they're trying to get that data
Mhm.
from the system. Um,
So I would say then to just kind of build on that, when you're starting, you might want to trade a little bit of that flexibility for consistency,
yeah,
right? So you can have a tool like ours where you can ask any question of the data that you would like, but you should be consistent in the way that you're approaching the question, even before you worry about what the result of the data would be,
yeah,
right? So
exactly.
in time, you want that ultimate flexibility for sure, but in the beginning, I would say trade some flexibility for consistency.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say even within that, there you don't have to trade off the power in the platform for consistency for the end users. And to this is
Correct.
very high level that we're talking here, but essentially what I'm saying is like dashboards, right? Custom built dashboards that someone at a high level will build for the rest of the team. And so when the team has a question of how much revenue did we make this month, they don't have to go into an analytics tool and find all that. They go to the dashboard that you set up and you go look at that. Then they ask, hey, of that $100,000 we made this month, what percent of it was made by this product? Well, then you have a little button that you click and it shows you, okay, from those 100,000, here's all the people that came out of it. And these are simple ways that a just like you would have a marketer, an automation marketer go in and set up your marketing funnels because not everyone can go in there. You can have someone come in on your team who understands this, who builds this out and build out a structure for your team who can then implement it. Because if we're looking at something like automation marketing, the person building out all the automations is not necessarily the same person writing all the emails. But because those automations
Right.
are set up and are configured in a way, then anyone can come in, any of the copywriters, any of the designers, any of the who's and whatnots can come in and build out their part of that flow without having to worry about, oh, this tag influences this automation that kicks off this stuff,
Right.
the
Right.
complicated stuff. So there is an idea of there's an owner to the overarching that then builds out simplification for the rest of the team in
From
those
just an
situations.
execution perspective, you're talking
Exactly.
about, right?
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So at SegMetrics, right? You and I fulfill that role most of the time. We
Internally,
do
yeah.
that. But I think just from the culture perspective, from for a team, you're hitting on something that's one layer deeper than I think the one layer deep. But we've missed a strata there, and I think that strata is that a data driven culture comes from the very top.
Yes.
If you, the founder CEO, weren't data driven, I would have no reason to be data driven,
Yeah.
right?
And
So I think it's really important to frame and think about first, set up the expectation that we are going to as an organization be data driven.
and it's interesting because when you say, because we've worked back at the agency days, we worked with a number of clients both that were data driven and weren't data driven. And within the data driven people, there were people who were not data, let's say, data savants, I guess. They were not
Mhm.
good at pulling the data. They were not good at analyzing the data, but it was important to them to be very data driven, right? And that in of itself is important. You don't have to be a data scientist to be data driven. All you have to
Correct.
the goal of being data driven is to trust the data and make decisions based on that data. And that doesn't mean 100%
Mhm.
always go with the data, but like that should be a big part of your decisions and your understanding of your marketing is, well, what does the data say?
I think it's such an important area that you've tapped into here. I think you've got to make sure you're choosing your metrics a little bit with care,
Mhm.
right? Because you get a lot of people who like to look at a lot of things. And why? Why are you looking at that? Think about it, align your metrics and your KPIs with those business goals that are actionable for you, right? So that you can do it. And even in our relationship over the past 13 years or so, sometimes we disagree on what does that thing mean. You've got on our Monday call, we do it regularly, right? You've got one widget on that dashboard that we look at that I go, I don't think you should track that bit of information, but it works for you to you're in your brain, you're doing something with it. But the trick there is choose your metrics based on the fact that if I see something, I can act on it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that gets a lot into the what do you do with this dang data, right? Um, which is also another step in that being data driven. Um, yeah, and I think you know we I think that touches on something really important, which is kind of that sharing of that data, right? So we've kind of talked
Mhm.
about what does it look like in having a source of truth that everyone trusts and that top down understanding um of that data and being data driven, but it really doesn't matter if that data is siloed, right? If no one has access to that
Yeah.
data, if no one is looking at that data, and we found this ourselves when we were doing weekly webinars, and as part of our data drivenness, it was okay. We're going to track how each of those webinars performed over time, over 2 to 3 months after we do the webinar. And so we had 60 reports over a year and some change, all right, once a week. And how many times did we look at those? I mean, at the beginning, we looked at them a lot, and then it just kind of
Mhm.
like died off. And it wasn't that they weren't shareable, it's that they weren't an active part of that sharing culture, right? They were
What I like
there, they were
Yeah, yeah,
available.
yeah. What I love about the way we run business and the way I've run businesses in the past when it comes to this is we have a meeting that is dedicated. The entire first half of that meeting is dedicated just to looking at the data.
Mhm.
Everybody has a piece of it, right? The success team pays attention to churn, tickets, things like that. The content team pays attention to social media and posting and engagement in emails. The ad side of our business pays attention to, are we bringing in trials? Are we bringing in people? We as a team look at that consistently every single week in exactly the same order. We pay attention to it, right? And what that does is that builds that muscle to say, we know we're going to pay attention to these numbers. And I think it's really that so not just saying at some point we'll look at the webinar data. No, we're going to look at the webinar data at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Every Tuesday morning, we're going to review these 10 things and then go over it and then act accordingly, right? Um, so I think that's really important if you're going to build a culture to build consistency in when are you going to look at things. And then
Yes.
what are you going to do about it, right? If you make your numbers or miss your numbers, or are
That's
we gonna
yeah.
countermeasure things? Are we going to You're right. And the other thing I think about this team meeting that I really like about our personal culture is that we don't penalize misses,
Yeah.
right?
That's really
Because
important.
right, because otherwise I'm not gonna wanna come to that meeting with data or information, right? I'm gonna be hesitant to do that.
And you're gonna cherry pick. You're gonna cherry pick the
Right.
data that makes you look good if you're
That's
worried
right.
about that type of stuff, and I agree, that's something that we really look at is we never say, "Oh, this campaign failed. Why is it is your fault. Why did you do this?"
Right.
It's, "What did this campaign failed. Why did it fail? What could we do better? Where did we maybe, miss?
Mhm.
And what were the processes that we failed in, getting this out the door, rather than whose fault was it?"
Right, and even if you get it out the door and you followed your processes perfectly and it fell flat, now you ask questions like, "Are we targeting the right people? Are we" right?
Mhm.
It invites that data curiosity, right? A failed metric is sometimes more important than a made metric because the failed metric gives you the opportunity to dig into something that you might be blind to otherwise.
Exactly. I think one of the things that's important to think of here, and going back to the webinar example, is goals. And what are the goals that we have that we're taking the data from? Because if you don't, and you mentioned this as well, if you don't have a goal, then the metrics don't matter. The data doesn't matter because you're not going to do anything with it. And so it becomes a vanity metric or it becomes, but even a vanity metric is a goal in some way. It's like, hey, we got another 20% leads. It's like, I don't know what we're going to do with that, but that's awesome. That gets everyone on the same page. But if we're not even looking at a goal, if we don't even have a reason for having those numbers, then you fall off. You stop looking at them. You start, there's no reason to look at them and it's just wasted time. And we found this with our Monday morning calls with some of the data that we were seeing on the support side. And it just became a string of numbers that we said every single week. And was that up?
Mhm.
Was that down? Is that good? Is that bad? What is that number? When we say 500 there, what does that really mean? Like, it's things like that. And
Right.
understanding what and you really phrased this well, I thought. Each person brings their metrics and their data to
Mhm.
the presentation, and they bring that data and those metrics because they have specific business goals that they are trying to achieve,
Mhm.
right? Copywriter the head of marketing is trying to grow new engagement. The, customer success team is trying to lower churn. Like, what is
Mhm.
each group trying to do? And then what are the metrics that they're showing that get everyone to understand that at a high level and ask questions as well. So not just, oh, we lowered churn, but to spur on conversation like, what type of customers did we have higher churn with and lower churn with? Like, yes, we lower
Right.
churn. Were there subgroups? Were there industries? Were there plans? Were there uh, places where people came in from?
Yep.
What people increased? What people decreased?
I think too, to empower people to use the data to put in countermeasures. And I'll take something from a previous role that I played. One of my jobs in this previous role that I had was to drive traffic to the website. That could be organic traffic, it could be social traffic. It was traffic. Traffic was a measurable thing for me. So if I missed my traffic goals, I could come in, I could say, okay, well, hey, rest of the team, we need to do I'm missing my goal, so I need assistance. So I need more social posts than we had planned. Or I need some additional budget so I can drive ad spend so that I can push traffic that way. So it's that ability to use the metric then to build a countermeasure to say, okay, I wasn't quite there, missed by a little bit. If I increased ad spend by $2,000, I could have made that traffic metric and we would have been fine because we know that downstream of that traffic metric, we're getting leads, we're getting customers, we're
Mhm.
getting things like that. Right. So it's really thinking about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we've talked a lot about kind of the overarching overview, like strategy.
Mhm.
What are some things that we can really bring in that people can do to start becoming data driven in their marketing beyond and building that culture beyond just saying data is important?
Well, I think it is having everything in one place, like we mentioned at the beginning of the call, and I think it's also encouraging that data curiosity inside of a tool. It's building common dashboards, common places to go look. You hit on a lot of these in kind of the beginning of this call, but the first step would be to adopt a platform like SegMetrics, right? Get all the information in one place, determine what we're going to look at as a team, and then determine what things I can look at. I should be looking at for me because my metrics up to the company are a little different. They roll up, right?
Hmm.
So in our Monday call, I don't talk about every single ad that brings in a lead, but I guarantee you I'm looking at that,
Right.
right? So that's not team information, but it's data that I should have. So I think it's important that when you pick a platform and you pick a way to think about this, that you think about all of the different tiers of data and you empower people in the moment to be able to build their own reports, their own dashboards that feed up to that overarching kind of look that you do maybe on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And I think the real important thing to that I also think culturally we do really well at Segmetrics is we we don't do big group trainings. We don't say, "Hey, whole team, let's get together and we're going to train you to run a report." What we do is we say, "Okay, Brian, you're responsible for these metrics. So go build that report." And if Brian gets stuck, then we go in and we say, okay, let's train on how to build that. So make that training like kind of almost like what's the term I'm looking for? Like just in time,
Hmm.
right? So that you empower them at their level that then allows them to roll that information up.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of boxes inside boxes. I love categorizing things into groups that go into bigger groups that are all categorized like and everything leads up. Like that's just the way my brain works. And that's why for me this is something that really resonates, which is okay, each team leader or each person has OKRs that they those key metrics, those key results that they are
Well,
trying to accomplish. They have their own things that they are measuring. So let's use advertising as an example. They're looking at the ads, they're looking at the spend, they're looking at impressions
well,
and click-through rates and all that stuff on their side. And then they are then averaging that up to a report that they give to everyone. So they're not saying, "Hey, my impressions on this ad was down 2%." What they're going to say is, "At a high level, here's how we're doing. And here are the big differences we saw from last time."
well,
So we saw that this new campaign that we're trying that is a click-through branding campaign is not doing as well as we thought. We're probably going to turn it off. Whereas this lead gen thing where we're sending people to PDFs is doing much better than we thought. We're going to run that another 2 weeks, see what the results are there, if those turn into trials, and then run off of that data. And so this is all the stuff that I think you have the individual block, you have the individual goals, you have the individual reporting, you have the department goals, and you have the department reporting, and then you have what you're presenting to everyone else at that top.
yep,
and everything it's all
It
a
all ladders up, right?
consolidation. It all ladders up. It's a condensation, not condensation, not consolation. It's a something elation of each of those pieces of data as
You
it goes
shouldn't be
up.
drinking at noon.
Shouldn't it is noon. This is why I enjoy these calls though. But then each part feeds into the next one and is a distillation of what you have at that lower level for essentially like you would send to a CEO. You send in the 5 bullet points, the executive
Mhm.
summary kind of thing. So you are creating an executive summary for your team, and then for their team, and then for the company at those different levels as they go up. And not to shamelessly plug, but shamelessly plug, the cool thing about SegMetrics is that because of the way that our dashboards all relate to each other and all the reports, you
Mhm.
build out that one report and then it automatically just feeds up. So you have 3 pages, 3 reports, and everything just feeds up to it, the other one. So as you're changing on one, it's applied to everything else.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, right? I think our tool is really, Segmetrics is really built for this, right? It's built so that you can report at multiple levels. It's not fixing just one problem, it can fix multiple problems. It allows the whole team to be engaged and think about the things that they need. So to just recap then just a little bit, first steps are um
Sole source of
top
truth.
down, think about it, right?
Yep.
Single source of truth, consistency in data. If you've got data in irregularities, fix
Oh
them
yeah.
quickly. Do your do your proof of concepts simple to begin with. Get more complicated as you go, as necessary. Only report on the things that you're going to make decisions about, and empower the team. Empower the uncertainty to some degree too, right? You know what I really like about our team, because we use this tool every day and we're in it every day, is there are a lot of times where they're bringing questions back to us, back to the whole team, and they're like, "I see this thing and I don't know what it is. Why is it there?" Right? That's when you've reached a level of maturity when you're not just paying attention to a set of numbers, but you're paying attention to the whole data set and you're looking for those outliers that go, that could be a something. Maybe it's not
Hmm.
a something, but it could be a something. So, really empower the team. Don't penalize them, right? And look at it regularly. Make it part of your weekly thing,
Yeah.
right? If you don't, then it's
It's
not
just
gonna
gonna
do any
sit
good.
there.
Right,
Especially with a remote team, right? Like
right.
there has to be, especially with a remote team, there has to be a moment when you're all getting together, whether that's in a team or full company wide, that everyone needs to be on the same page with this stuff.
I think what I appreciate about our long relationship, Keith, and the back and forth that we've had is that I come with a lot of opinions about this very topic, and you've allowed me to infect you with the thinking on it, right? So, uh,
I still am amazed that 2 people who are as opinionated as us have not murdered each other yet. But
I
it
think distance is the only thing that saved us. That's it. Distance is the only thing that saved us. What I like in the support channel is when they say mom and dad are fighting again, right? That's when I
really,
know
really,
we're. But you know what?
which
We're always better for it at the end.
we're always better for it at the end. And you know what? We always base it on data. We just had that
That's
conversation
right.
right before this. Is like, what are we going to do for our end of the year stuff? We had a decision.
Yep.
I was like,
We
I don't
looked at
know
the
if
data.
is that a good decision? We looked at the data, ain't a good decision. And that's what we're going to hold by.
Right. Yeah,
So,
you're exactly right. I mean, we have a practical example today where I said, no, we're going to do this thing. And then we looked at the data together and went, well, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that thing.
why
That's
did we do
right.
that
Like,
last time? Oh dear God.
why did we do that last time? I'm not even sure why we did it last time.
All right,
All right.
Scott. Thank you so
Keith,
much.
awesome.
And
All
I'll
right,
see you
man.
later.
All
Cheers.
right. Later, bud. Bye.